I felt like, they had like, a whole lot of potential. Jay was more quiet. Jay was more quiet. But I mean, I learned that Jay was being quiet because he was taking notes. He was taking notes, observing everything, taking it all in, because, sometimes you around and you're watching to see things to do.
They say every empire falls not with a bang, but with a whisper. And for Diddy, that whisper was captured on tape. The FBI's undercover play reads like something from a thriller, a carefully chosen cellmate, a man who wasn't just another inmate, but a planted confidant, a spider in the web, sent to coax the truth out of one of hip-hop's most untouchable moguls. Weeks went by in a cramped concrete box where every conversation mattered. The so-called friend listened, joked, earned trust, until at last, one night, when Diddy thought the walls of prison kept his secret safe, he spilled the words that may end his life as he knows it. That was the moment the walls came crashing down, when a career built on secrets shattered in the span of a few whispered sentences.
Three law firms on retainer. I don't know how much money is coming in, but I know that a lot of money is going out every single month for Diddy.
The brilliance of the operation is almost cruel. Imagine the betrayal when Diddy realized his new confidant wasn't a brother in captivity, but an FBI agent in disguise, recording every word. We're told he described how the order was given, who was there, what was paid, all details no outsider could ever fabricate. It wasn't the vague testimony of a rival gang member or the sensational chatter of a bitter ex. It was Diddy's own voice, caught on tape, unguarded, admitting what so many had suspected for decades, that he orchestrated the downfall of Shakur. That tape, if it truly exists, isn't just evidence. It's dynamite with the power to blow apart one of the longest-running mysteries in music history. For years, conspiracy theories circled like vultures over Shakur's grave. Fans whispered about shadowy figures, about record label wars, about jealous rivals with too much money and too much to lose. Some accused Suge Knight. Others pointed to West Coast gangs, and Diddy's name was always there, dancing at the edges of suspicion. Now, suddenly, it's no longer rumor, but confession. That's the smoking gun investigators have been hunting since 1996, the missing puzzle piece that transforms gossip into courtroom reality. But here's a dangerous question. Could this tape really exist, and if it does, is it strong enough to finally bury Diddy in a cell for the rest of his days?
Named Diddy 77 times in court documents related to Tupac's murder.
This isn't just about revenge or an old East Coast versus West Coast feud. What if the FBI isn't stopping at Shakur? We're hearing whispers that they see this confession as the first thread of a much larger tapestry, one tied to racketeering, trafficking, and the underground machinery that kept Diddy's empire running. His freak-offs, the allegations of coercion, the raided mansions stacked with thousands of bottles of oil and locked rooms of hidden tapes. What if Shakur's case is simply the key to pry open the door? Federal agents don't spend years setting traps just to solve a cold case for nostalgia. They want the network, the accomplices, the flow of money and power that stretch from recording studios to dark alleys.
You understand? I think that they don't want, if they was in any of those freak-off tapes, if they played a part in any of those Diddy sessions, they don't want it to get out to the general public to make up their brand.
And then there's the second rumor, the one that flips everything on its head. What if Shakur's story wasn't just about silencing a rival? What if the plan was never to erase him, but to make him vanish? We've all seen the theories, sightings in Cuba, locals in Havana swearing they saw him strolling by, bodyguards hinting at secret flights out of LA under the cover of night. Michael Nice, the ex-security officer, insisted he helped smuggle Shakur away, swapping a body in the morgue, sneaking him onto a plane, flying him to the Caribbean, and on to Cuba. He described the hugs, the handshakes, the relief of escaping what he called a prison of fame. Even Suge Knight once hinted, why you think nobody been arrested if they said they the one that did it? Because Shakur not gone. Could it be that Diddy wasn't just eliminating a rival, but helping facilitate the ultimate disappearing act gone wrong? Look closer and the cracks widen. Why was Shakur, who usually wore a vest, caught without one that night? Why did a normally buzzing Vegas strip produce no reliable eyewitnesses to the shooting? Why did the coroner list his height and weight incorrectly? And what about the supposed autopsy photos so many call fake? These are not just quirks of memory, they are red flags, and for decades they've fueled the suspicion that the official story was nothing but a stage play. Adding the mysterious retirement of the man who cremated Shakur vanishing immediately after, and you start to wonder, was this all orchestrated?
Through their thing, and I was big man. That was the extent of our beef.
If Diddy truly admitted his hand in the plot, was he bragging about arranging Shakur's end? Or confessing to a role in a cover-up so wild it makes Hollywood look tame? That's the twist that keeps fans awake at night. Some insist they've seen Shakur alive in Belize, others in Havana, even in nightclubs besides celebrities who shouldn't know a ghost. There are photographs that look eerily convincing until skeptics cry, Photoshop. There are lyrics in his posthumous albums that read like coded messages. Inside the Don the 7-Day Theory, the text itself seemed to wink at us. Exit Shakur. Enter Machiavelli. Rearrange the letters, they said, and you get M alive K. Too many coincidences or too much smoke for there not to be fire. What's more, if Shakur did escape, why? His own mother once said her son had chose to leave quietly. Chose. Not forced, not taken. Chose. That one word has haunted fans. If true, then Diddy's role becomes something far stranger than a mob-style contract. It suggests a partnership, a deal brokered in whispers, perhaps even protection bought with blood money. And if that's the case, then this latest confession is not just about guilt, it's about exposing the mechanics of a plan the world was never meant to see.
Now, I ain't trying to say that's some kind of conspiracy, and maybe some other shit was going on, or this, that, and the third. But brother, he had that conversation with K. Slade 2 weeks before he was murdered.
The thought alone raises a terrifying possibility. If Shakur was smuggled out because a hit had been placed on him, who placed it? And why was Diddy's name always so close to the flame? Did he pay to silence a rival, or did he pay to help him vanish, only for the plan to spiral into chaos? When we piece together the missing witness in Diddy's current trial, the federal raids, the confessions from gang insiders like Keefe who claimed Diddy offered millions for heads to roll, it all begins to merge into one grim narrative. The timing, the money, the fear of Suge Knight, the diss tracks that cut too deep. It paints the picture of a man caught in a storm of his own making.
You know, the guy's not here. And you gotta figure, we never met.
So you and Tupac never met? That was just...
So it's nothing personal, him and Big.
And here's the cruelest irony. While Diddy sits in a cell facing accusations that could put him away for life, the world once again speaks the name of Shakur louder than ever. Whether he rests beneath the ground or hides in exile with a cigar in hand, his ghost is more alive than Diddy's reputation. That is the ultimate downfall, the empire reduced to whispers on tape, the legacy undone by the very secret he thought would never leave his lip. Because if the FBI really has that recording, then it's not just the end of Diddy's career. It's the rebirth of one of music's greatest mysteries, dragged from the shadows and set ablaze, forcing us to ask, what else has been hidden all along? And if the operation was designed to bait him into this confession, we must wonder, was this about one man's guilt, or about dismantling an entire empire of power, silence, and fear that stretched far beyond the night Shakur's car was riddled with bullets?
And that was to destroy East Coast rap. And what I mean by that, and I know people gonna be like, yo, Gene is out of his mind and everything like that. Check this out, brother.
Rumors swirl that this is just the beginning, that federal prosecutors are weaving threads from the 90s into today's indictments, using the Shakur case to prove that Diddy's empire was never built on music alone. The parallels are chilling. Just as insiders once whispered about million-dollar bounties, now others talk about NDAs, silence victims, and missing witnesses. Each accusation seems to echo the past, a pattern of control and secrecy that has finally snapped. And as we follow this story, we can't escape the nagging thought that the truth about Shakur's fate might not just be history. It might be the key to understanding everything that's happening to Diddy right now. And that's where the trail leads us, into darker alleys of speculation, where every rumor feels like a clue, and every unanswered question a door waiting to be opened.
Are scared of Diddy, and they're scared like how powerful he is and the things that he could do to them?
I don't think they are scared of him. I think they more so...
The man planted in Diddy's cell wasn't just some random convict with a badge hidden under his jumpsuit. He was a strategist, a trained manipulator who knew how to study body language, when to stay quiet, when to laugh at a joke, when to mirror a gesture. Every late night talk, every story swapped across the bunk beds was another calculated step in a psychological chess match. The FBI didn't leave anything to chance. They handpicked someone who could chip away at Diddy's defenses until the mogul's paranoia was replaced with trust. That trust, once cracked open, became the perfect trap. Did Diddy ever stand a chance against an opponent like that? Or was he doomed from the moment the cell door clanged shut behind him?
You get it? So Puff would have to do something like that if he get on the stand. Now, as far as, is he gonna turn people in? Is he gonna cooperate? If the federal government wants him to cooperate and they're gonna cut his time, because right now he's looking at 15 to life.
We can picture the betrayal washing over him now, the realization that his most personal confession was nothing but bait for a hidden recorder. Imagine spending weeks thinking you'd found someone who understood the weight of fame and downfall, only to discover you'd been talking to the government the whole time. The irony is almost biblical. A man who built his empire on control, undone by his own loose tongue, in a place where he thought no one was listening. But the FBI was listening. Every word, every pause, every crack in his voice.
They laid the blueprint for me, and they're not here anymore. So I always want to make sure that, through me, through all of us, so, that they live on.
The deeper we look, the more we see the eerie foreshadowing woven into Shakur's music itself. His lyrics read like warnings, coded messages hinting at betrayal waiting in the shadows. In Vanishing, he declared himself untouchable, as if daring his enemies to strike. In Hail Mary, the tone shifted darker, filled with visions of betrayal, haunting imagery that fans now dissect line by line as prophecy. Shakur admired Machiavelli, the strategist who wrote about deception and survival. Adopting the alias Machiavelli, he seemed to signal his intent to play the long game, even to fake his own downfall if necessary. Was he telling us even back then that someone close would play the role of Judas? And if that Judas was Diddy, then the prophecy is no longer hidden in metaphor, it's standing in court transcripts and secret tapes. This connection between art and reality gives the entire scandal an almost supernatural edge. Was Shakur predicting his own betrayal, or was he simply aware of the forces closing in on him? Fans point to his posthumous albums as evidence that he had mapped out his fate, his warnings etched into songs that still feel chillingly relevant today. Lyrics about trust, about enemies masquerading as friends, about money turning allies into traitors, these now land with a weight that's hard to dismiss. In the story we're seeing unfold, Diddy becomes not just a rival, but the ultimate Judas figure, the one who turned whispers into blood and silence into power.
If that's part of the indictment, that's somewhat like a blackmail. He was blackmailing people to be in the freak-offs. So that's federal. That could be that's a federal charge. He can't blackmail people to say, yo, listen here, you did it once and you're gonna do it again. That ain't gonna make it with the government or nobody.
But the revelations don't just haunt the past, they ripple violently into the present. If the confession tape really exists, the legal consequences could be catastrophic. Diddy already stands trial on charges that could keep him locked away for life, but an admission tying him to Shakur's end would make every courtroom whisper turn into a roar. The FBI doesn't need to drop the audio for the world to hear, just the threat of it hanging over the proceedings is enough to rattle the industry. What happens when prosecutors decide to pull that trigger and play it out loud in front of a jury? The cultural fallout would be just as explosive. This is not just another scandal about a mogul's private life, it's the reopening of one of music's darkest chapters. The East Coast versus West Coast feud left scars on hip-hop that never fully healed, and to pin Shakur's end directly on one of the biggest figures in that war changes everything we thought we knew. If true, it rewrites the history books, flipping Diddy from a survivor of that era to the mastermind behind its bloodiest climax. The implications are staggering. Could the entire rise of Bad Boy Records have been built on the silencing of its greatest rival?
So they was placed to destroy the East Coast rap. And then, along came a somebody. They was about to bring East Coast rap back. And there's nothing they could do about it. And this kid was finna put East Coast.
For decades, the narrative has often cast Suge Knight as the obvious villain in Shakur's end. He was in the car that night, he had the enemies, he had the reputation. But what if the story is more twisted than that? What if Suge's role was not as the mastermind, but as a man who understood the value of silence, choosing to let suspicions swirl around him while the real power brokers moved in the shadows? His lack of answers, his refusal to clear the air, may not have been ignorance at all, but a strategy to keep his empire intact, even if it meant living under a cloud of suspicion. We have to consider the psychology here. Suge was a man who thrived on intimidation, but he was also a businessman who understood leverage. If he knew that Diddy had orchestrated the hit, silence would have been his greatest weapon. By never revealing what he saw, never breaking the code of that night, Suge could ensure that he remained indispensable to the narrative. The less he said, the more powerful he became, holding secrets that others would pay dearly to keep buried. It raises the question, was he protecting himself, or was he protecting the entire structure of the industry that depended on these shadows never being exposed?
Sean had to take responsibility for what he did as an individual. Sean is the one who pulled that gun out. Sean is the one who shot. So he has to take responsibility for that.
And then comes the possibility that Suge wasn't just quiet, but complicit. If both men understood that Shakur was more than a rival, that he was a threat to their financial survival and reputations, then the silence becomes something darker, almost a pact. Suge may have played the role of the wounded survivor, the man grazed by bullets in the attack, but behind that image could have been a calculation. Let the blame drift toward the streets while the true arrangement stayed hidden. This idea, that Suge and Diddy might have both benefited from Shakur's absence, adds a layer of psychological intrigue that makes the story even harder to untangle. And then there's the industry itself. If Diddy's words are proven real, how many others fall with him? We've already seen whispers of a network, insiders who helped orchestrate cover-ups, associates who moved money, lawyers who silenced victims with NDAs worth millions of dollars. If Shakur's case becomes the cornerstone of this investigation, it could unravel decades of secrets. Record labels, managers, even artists who thought they were untouchable might suddenly find their names dragged into the spotlight. That's why some say the FBI isn't just going after one man, they're aiming to expose an entire empire.
Because him and Diddy was given that deal, we gotta keep these East Coast rappers down. Because down South rappers, Cash Money, No Limit, Ludacris and them, they was taking little money and bringing back more money and making more money for them.
It's no wonder comparisons to Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell keep surfacing in conversations about Diddy's empire. Just as those names became synonymous with hidden power and exploitation, Diddy's world is now being painted the same way, a labyrinth of money, silence, and shadows. And if the federal government is treating this as more than a celebrity scandal, as a network that needs dismantling, then the confession about Shakur is just the first domino to fall. But the biggest question remains: will we ever hear the tape? If prosecutors hold it back, the mystery grows even larger, a weapon waiting to be unleashed at the perfect moment. If they release it, the shockwaves will be instant, reverberating through courts, studios, and every corner of hip-hop culture. Either way, it's clear that the truth, or something close to it, is no longer buried. It's moving, alive, and dangerous. And here's the most chilling part. If this is true, no one in the industry is safe. Every rival, every label head, every associate from the 90s who thought their secrets were secure could be next in line. Shakur's story may have ended on the Vegas Strip, but its aftershocks are only now reaching their full strength. The storm is here, and it's tearing down everything in its path. So now we ask you, do you believe the FBI really has the tape? Could this be the final chapter in one of music's greatest mysteries? Or just the beginning of something far darker? Drop your thoughts below, because this isn't just history being rewritten, it's happening in real time. Until next time, stay sharp, stay questioning, and remember, in this world of fame and shadows, nothing is ever what it seems.